I think I mentioned not too long ago when we had a guest speaker that it's important when you get a gift. As the Gemara says that when a person receives a gift, it's important to know that they got a gift. And you guys are about to get a big gift, a big matana. It's a big schus. Must confess, I've been trying to get this to happen for a few years. And it's not Rabbi Schachter's fault that it hasn't happened, but Baruch Hashem, we're zocheh now to have Rabbi Schacter, who's just been an illustrious career, which is not ending, never stops. I met Rabbi Schacter many years ago at conventions, at Kiruv conferences, where he spoke, and there's certain people that we just connect with each other because we're on the same page, so to speak. Now, Rabbi Schacter is going to speak about machlokas, something that's really a troubling thing, and it's ironic that we asked Rabbi Schacter. Rabbi Schacter suggested the topic because if we had to choose a number of people who really embody the antithesis of machlokas, meaning unity and bridging all of the gaps and bridging all the worlds, I think Rabbi Schacter would be at everybody's top 10 list. I'm not going to spend my time introducing him. I want to give him as much time as possible to share his Torah with us, and it's a great privilege to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Karlinsky, for Shus Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Schoonmaker, and beloved friends. I want to say at the outset just a word about David and fellow Shapell, who have the name of this institution that you've been blessed to be studying with for a while. I don't know if you had a chance to encounter them, maybe through pictures or through videos. They were extraordinary human beings and wonderful Jews, very much a product forged in the crucible of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, and committed very much to the perpetuation and to the ongoing future of Klal Yisrael. And you're blessed to be able to be an institution that they endowed, or who at least that bears their name. And so appreciate that very much. I also want to say a word about my friend Rabbi Karlinsky, who I have admired now for, I would say, decades. And I hope you appreciate what you have here. You're in and out. You're here for a year or two or three. I'm not sure exactly what the rhythm is. But as long as you're here, talk to this man, pick his brain, bother him, nudge him, pursue him, and be open to learn a great deal from him. And I'm sure it's true also in the case of Rabbi Schoonmaker. You're blessed. You're young, so you don't realize the brachos that you have. So maybe you take somebody from the outside to remind you to take advantage of the Shefa brachos. I want to begin. I don't really want to talk about the machlokes, but what can I do? That was the request. So we'll get to machlokes. But I want to begin with the thought on these Parshiot Hashavua that is very much relevant to you, because my understanding is this is the first time that I've had a chance to be in this incredible institution. My understanding is that you're on journeys. You're on a journey. And you're on various stages of a journey. Some of you are beginning your Jewish journey. Some of you are in the middle of your Jewish journey. I would say all of us are in the middle of our Jewish journeys. Some of you have a little bit more advanced knowledge of Jewish texts and Jewish tradition. Some of you on the way to get more advanced knowledge of Jewish texts and Jewish tradition. And so I want to reflect on the notion of journey and also on the notion of frustration. Because I'm sure that there are some of you who are sitting here who feel like, I wish I would have done this 5 years ago. Maybe I wish I would have been raised with this. Maybe I wish I would have had the wisdom to come to Shapell's when I was younger. Maybe to go to another school. Shapell's is generally for post-college age, from what I understand. And maybe I feel like I'm starting a little bit late and I'm trying to catch up and I wish I knew more and I'm struggling and I'm not where I want to be and I wish I could be further along. So I want to share with you a thought that resonates with me deeply because I'm also on a journey. and I'm a little bit older than you, but I also wish that by now in my life I would have been a little bit more and a little bit deeper, a little bit better, a little bit stronger. And I bring myself nachama, comfort, and chizuk from what I'm about to share with you. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes down to Egypt, and born in Egypt, lives in Egypt, and then he leaves because he gets into trouble. And he goes to a bucolic area where he becomes a shepherd. And he becomes a shepherd for many, many decades. And then one day he encounters this incredible sight of a bush that's burning, but it's not burning, and he's drawn to it. And God begins a conversation with him. It's 2 chapters in last week's Parsha. Perek Gimel, Perek Dalet, chapter 3, chapter 4, in the book of Exodus, in Sefer Shmos. Moshe Rabbeinu, hi, it's me, it's God. Glad you came over because you were intrigued by what you saw. I've heard what's going on in Egypt. I recognize how my children have been suffering all these years, and I've decided that now's the time to take them out. And I want you to know, Moshe, that you're the guy. I want you to go, and I want you to be in charge of bringing them out of Egypt. At which point begins a conversation that, according to our rabbis in the Medrash, lasted for a week, 1 entire week. And Hashem says, take them out. Moshe says, no, I can't do that. I don't have the ability to do that. And God says, don't worry, not a problem. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be standing next to you. I'm going to be holding your hand. No, I really can't. I can't do it because what am I going to tell them? How am I going to explain this to them? No, here's what you're going to say. Here's what you're going to do. And I'm telling you. And then there are all kinds of signs. This is going to happen with a hand and with a rod. And they're going to listen to you. And I'm telling you, V'shamu lekolecha. I tell you, listen, I'm the big G. I'm God. And I'm telling you, V'shamu lekolecha. A few psukim later, Moshe responds and says, Hein lo yishma'u b'koli. They're not going to listen to me. And they go back and forth and back and forth. Kvad peh v'chvad lashon anochi. I'm not articulate. How can I talk to Pharaoh? He's not going to be impressed by the way I speak. Back and forth for a week, and finally, Moshe says, Shlach na biyad tishlach. Enigmatic phrase, Shlach na, please send at the hand of who you're going to send. At which point, the Torah says, Vayicharaf Hashem b'Moshe. God slams his hand down and says, Moses, what did I do? I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't want to be matriarchy. God slams his hand down and says, Moses, this conversation is over. You're going down. Ad Kan, this is what the Torah tells us. And we just heard it a couple of days ago. I have 3 questions. Question number 1 is, where is Moshe's ben Adam Lamako? Where is Moshe's respect for God? Listen, I mean, you're young, and you're becoming more and more socialized into the world of traditional Judaism. But here's the deal. If God says to you, do something, and it's mamish God, and you know it's God, so what's your answer? Just tell me what. We're talking to Rabbonu Shalom. If Hashem says do something, and it's mamish Hashem, so, I can't. You think they're going to listen to me? I know better. They're not going to. What kind of chutzpah is that? This is how you talk to God? For a whole week you're fighting? It's pas garnish. It's not appropriate. Hashem says, here I am. Do, go, jump, how high? That's it. Where is his respect for God? Second of all, where is his respect for Bnei Yisrael? Moshe Rabbeinu knows exactly what's going on in Egypt. He ended up a couple of decades ago leaving because he got into trouble, because he saw an Egyptian hitting a Jew. He went out, vayar b'sivlosam, he saw that they were slaves, his co-religionists. He saw what was happening to them. What should he have done? Hashem says, Moshe, go down to Egypt and take him out. Moshe should have said, God, where you been all these decades? I'm plotting. How could this be? Quick! Every hand, a can't, more Jews are suffering. And more babies are being stuffed into pyramids. A whole week! He could have saved so many Jews. Where's your ben adam lachavero? Where's your sensitivity? You know what's going on. Letzach, he's having a great time. He's relaxing in the middle of the woods, the forest, and his sheep, and it's bucolic, and it's calm, and it's sweet. And in Egypt, they're dying, they're suffering, they're being tortured. And it's on his mind. How could this be? And now he has a chance to make a difference. What? Where is your caring? First of all, how do you talk to God like that? Second of all, why are you not sensitive? Was he callous or indifferent to the fate of his co-religionists? Of course not. That's how he got into trouble. He got here in the first place. And my third question is, what a shlach na biyat tishlach me? Shlach na, send, please, at the hand of who you're going to send. So Rashi says, my brother Aaron. You see, my brother Aaron is articulate, he's well-spoken, he's sophisticated, he can handle an argument. You should send Aaron. The Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which is a very significant late midrashic text, says that the reference here is to Eliyahu Hanavi. That Moshe Rabbeinu says to God, you shouldn't send me, you should send Eliyahu Hanavi. The question is, what's Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, doing in the middle of this conversation? I heard from many years ago, like a very brief, maybe 10-second thought from Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik that I want to develop and share with you now. Here's how I understand what happened. Hashem comes to Moshe and says, take him out of Egypt. Moshe says, you know what, God, great idea. But I know what's going to happen. You see, I'm going to take him out of Egypt. And then, after a while, we're going to get to the Promised Land. And we'll be in the Promised Land for a couple of centuries, and then we're going to have a temple. And that temple will last for a couple of centuries, and then it's going to get destroyed. And then we're going to have a second temple. And that's going to last for a couple of centuries, and then that's going to get destroyed. And then we're going to go into this massive, humongous exile. And we're going to have terrible time in this exile. In the 2nd century, the 10 martyrs, the Asar Arugei Malchus. At the end of the 11th century, the First Crusades. In the 12th century, the Second Crusades. In the 13th century, the burning of the Talmud in Paris in 1242. In the 14th century, the Black Death massacres in 1348. The end of the 15th century, the Spanish expulsion. In the 17th century, the Khmelnytsky massacres that are going to decimate East European Jewry. The beginning of the 20th century, the Kishinev pogrom, the middle of the 20th century, there's going to be a Shoah. My God, at the end of the 20th century, buses are going to be blowing up in Yerushalayim, and wonderful B'nai Torah are going to be knifed in Har Nof. And then October 7th, God, I beg you, don't send me. Send Eliyahu. Who is Eliyahu? What role does Elijah play in our tradition? Eliyahu is the Mevaser HaGeulah. Eliyahu is the harbinger of redemption. Send him, and we're done. We don't have to go through all of this tragedy. Moshe Rabbeinu was arguing with God. He had the chutzpah to argue with God for a week because he loved the Jews so much. Adarabah. Because he cared so much for the Jews, he went toe to toe with none other than God himself because he didn't want to do this. He wanted to circumvent all of this tragedy. And what does the Kadosh Baruch Hu say to him? Moshe, doesn't work that way. It's not possible to go from absolute servitude to magnificent redemption in one fell swoop. You can't go from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds. Everything is a journey. Everything is a process. And it takes time. Sometimes it's harder, and sometimes it's easier. I outline now a number of tragic events, but Baruch Hashem, we have a Rashi, and we have a Rashba, and we have a Rambam, and we have a Rabbi Kiva Eger, and we have Rabbi Chaim Ozer Grzhensky, we have Gedolei Yisrael, we have a tradition, we have a Masorah. And the Masorah is possible because there were times when things were quiet. It's not always Vahi ben Esoah ha'aron. The aron was not always moving and rushing and running, scared from place to place. But there were times of Uvenucho Yomar, when it was quiet, still, and we would be able to anchor ourselves, and be able to develop ourselves, and to make something of ourselves. Sometimes it's harder, and sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it takes a long time, and sometimes it's shorter. That is the process of redemption. The key word is process. Hashem says to Moshe someday, and we say this in the Haftorah on Shabbos HaGadol, Hinei Anochi Sholeach Lachem Es Eliyah Hanavi. Someday I'm going to send Elijah. I promise you I'm going to send Elijah. This is going to end. But before it ends, we have a process. And that's what I think about myself in my own life, and I want to share that with you. It's a journey. Some of you, I'm sure, wish, probably all of you wish, that you'd be, like you'd knock off Bava Kama already and actually understand it, or whatever Masechta you're learning, and maybe a second Masechta. And what's taking me so long? And why am I banging my head? And where have I been for the first 20 years of my life? And why am I not further advanced? And why don't I know more? Why am I not committed more? Why am I struggling? Why is it taking me so long? And the answer is that's the human condition. And that's the national condition. Nothing happens 1, 2, 3. And I must tell you, I don't know you. I wish I did, but I have, from everything I've heard about you, just unbelievable derech eretz, which means respect for you. You're sitting in here, in this room, you're sitting in front of Gemaras, you're sitting in front of Chumashim, you're sitting in the presence of incredible rabbinic scholars and educational leaders, and you want to learn, and you want to grow. And it's going to take time. But you're on the journey. Life is a journey. And you should have tremendous, tremendous self-respect for engaging in this journey, for embarking on this journey, for sticking it out on this journey. And like so many others in the decades who have preceded you, spend time here, chaperei, and learn as much as you can, and then move on to the rest of your lives. And whatever you're going to do, these years will be with you and will motivate you to take your places in your communities, in your cities, to be able to be leaders of the Jewish people and to bottle the role models that you have in front of you. And then you become a role model. And little by little, to contribute, to hitch your wagons to the caravan of Jewish destiny. Because that's what you're doing. Which brings me to machlokes. I have to talk about machlokes, so I have to have 6 minutes to talk about machlokes. So I'm not sure what the question is. How does machlokes begin? How could it not? How could there not? You think everybody agrees? Does everybody agree with everybody else? Does everybody think that everybody else is 100% right? You look at something, you analyze something, we come with our own predispositions, we come with our own lives, we come with our own experiences, we come with our own families, we come with our own schooling. We have a multiplicity of influences that shape us and which will lead us to different conclusions. But let's take a look at a couple of Gemaras, just to get a little bit of a sense, at least to anchor what we have in rabbinic texts. And if there is anything that I think you should walk away with from this incredible institution, is that at some point you could say whatever you want to say. but you will only have credibility if you could anchor it in a rabbinic text. Instead of blowing wind and pontificating and saying deis and making pronouncements, that's what the whole world is about, right? And that's what we see on this kind of item all the time. Everybody's got what to say, everybody's saying and doing, and it's narishkeit. It's ridiculous, it's stupid, it's nonsense. The only thing that's going to make a difference, give me a Gemara, give me a Chazal, give me a Medrash. Show me that you could see this in the tradition, and then you'll have respect, and then people will understand and appreciate what you have to say. Says the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin 88b. So I have the original on the top. Rabbi Karlinsky asked me to come with a little bit of English, so this way everybody should be mamish literally on exactly the same page. So there's a story here in the Gemara. Let's get to the bottom line. A couple of lines from the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom. Yisharabu, Talmidei, Shammai v'Hillel, Shalo, Shimshu, Kol Tzorchan. It's the last paragraph on the bottom right in the English. The Brisa relates that this ideal situation, originally there was no disagreement, because the closer we got to Sinai, the more clear everything was. But then as time goes on, you can understand, Lahavdil Elef Havdolos, which means not really a parallel, but nevertheless I want to share it, the game of telephone. So the game of telephone is, you start over here, and by the time you get over here, it's Leidubin V'Loyar whatever this guy said by the time it gets over here. So what happens is, over the course of time, says the Gemara, Misharabu Tamidei Shama V'Hillel, that's pretty much way into the cycle of the tradition, the Shalshelas HaKabbalah. Misharabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel Shalo Shimshu Kol Tzorkon Rabu Machlokas b'Yisrael V'Naasis Torah Kishtei Toros. The Brisa relates that this ideal situation of unanimity in understanding the religious tradition did not last, but once there increased the number of students of Shammai and Hillel. These are the two very famous schools whose teachings we encounter regularly throughout rabbinic literature, who had not studied sufficiently. Dispute in the nation of Israel proliferated, ad kedei kach, so much so, that the Torah became as 2 Torahs. What causes disagreement? Because I didn't really follow my Rebbe so much. I didn't understand. I didn't ask. I didn't spend time with him. He said something, it wasn't clear, but it didn't matter. I wasn't involved so much with my teacher, so I didn't get the full story. I didn't get the nuance. I didn't appreciate the complexity. And so when I'm confronted with something, I just blow out something that I thought I heard, but I didn't really hear because it really is not relevant to the particular situation that I am now finding myself addressing. And then we have disagreement. Says the Gemara in Sota 47b on page 2. We have an additional category that leads to disagreement. And you understand that disagreement really matters, because we're not talking here about should I wear a purple tie or a green tie. So that's a subject sometimes of major disagreement. I don't know if you're married. If you are, Mitzvah Shem. If you're not, you will be. So should I have a green dress, a purple dress? That could be a thing. That could be like a big deal. But this is not this, as significant as that is. And I don't undermine the significance for 1 second. But we're talking here about mitzvahs, the oraisa, biblical commandments. We're talking about rabbinic commandments. We're talking about, there's a lot of an impact that, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? And if I do it right, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God gives me a big fat check in my book in the sky, and I'm good to go. If I do it wrong, I'm in trouble. And there are implications, and it matters. So machlokes is something really serious and complicated and has tremendous implications and force to it. Here we have a different category. Sota 47b, 5 lines from the bottom, in the middle of the line. Misharabu, in the middle of the left, bottom left in the English. When the number of haughty-minded Torah students increased, Rabu machlokas b'Yisrael, the number of disputes involving halachic matters increased. And then we have the same phrase that we just saw earlier in the tractate Sanhedrin. Misha Rabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel Shelo Shimshu Kol Tzorkon, when the number increased of students of Shammai and Hillel didn't serve their teachers sufficiently. Here too, Rabu machlokas b'Yisrael v'nase Torah kishtei Toros, halachic disputes increased, and there were 2 Torahs. So the second one we already encountered in the earlier text. Now we have another one that is haughty-minded. So on the right-hand side, I gave you the footnote in the Art Scroll English, where this is where I took these translations. So footnote 66, bottom right, page 2, an arrogant person. If you're arrogant and you're not kafuf to your Rebbe and you don't submit to your Rebbe and you think you actually may even know something, maybe you may know something that you think will counter a position that your Rebbe took, then you're in big trouble because you're not part of the cycle of tradition. An arrogant person tends to place exaggerated confidence in his mental prowess. Thus, he does not listen carefully to his teacher, but relies on his acumen. And the next one is essential to the development, footnote 67, is to apprentice to a Torah scholar. The third category of disagreement starts us even earlier, and that's a Gemara Maseches Temura. The original is on page 3. I gave you the full English translation on page 4. The Gemara here says in the first wide line, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, English translation, middle of the left column on page 4. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, 3,000 laws were forgotten during the period of mourning for Moses. Footnote 40, the agony of losing their leader caused them to forget. So here it's not a matter of, Ich bin a Greisa Balabas, I'm a Knacker, I'm a Balgaiva, I am haughty, or I don't really need to spend a lot of time with my Rabbeim, I can figure this out on my own. But, just the vagaries of history, the complexity, the sadness of the passing of great leaders, and you get a bissel famished, which means you get mixed up a little bit and you're not focused. It's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're human. And when you're human, you can't always get it. There are things that occupy your mind that make it difficult for you to remember. And so things get a little fuzzy over the course of time and it becomes disagreement. Let's go to page 6 and then 5 minutes and then, you know what, I'll stop now. Anybody have anything to say? Any comments? Any thoughts? What do you think about my Dvar Torah about journey? Hello? Are you with me? It's a journey. You're on a journey? Yes? Raise your hand if you're on a journey. If you're not raising your hand, you're in big trouble. Okay. We're all on a journey, so don't get frustrated. Don't get frustrated. As I get this, that's the way it is. Moshe was frustrated. He didn't want a journey. He wanted, boom, pop Elijah down, whoosh, take him out of Egypt, boom, straight to the Holy Land, and we're done. We live b'shalom u'b'shalva lo'ad u'lenetzach netzachim forever, and we're finished. Why do we have to go through all of this? And God says, no, that's not how it is. That's just not how it is. Not for the Jewish people, and not for a Jewish person or any person. The human condition, by definition, is circuitous. It is complex. And then, how does Machlokas begin? Well, we saw 3 different categories that explain how this begins, but we need to understand, and maybe that was the nature of the question, that a lot matters. And at the end of the day, if there's a Machlokas, and we have great, holy, wonderful Jews taking opposite positions, at the end of the day we land based on certain principles that determine how do we land, but we have to land. and then we're locked in. Once we land, we're locked in, with the exception of the Gemara on page 6, where it opens up a little bit. But before we get to page 6, anybody want to say anything? Yeah.
Is there a connection we could draw with Rabbi Akiva and his Talmidim, that they weren't loving each other?
So it's interesting that the reason why the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, 12,000 pairs died or were killed between Pesach and Shavuos, nohagu kavod zeh b'zeh, is not utilized in the context of this conversation. That Gemara always really troubled me, because how could that be? Right in this room, all right, raise your hand. You're nohag kavod. You respect one another. You may disagree. I see you got a little like you're not sure. So maybe at least respect somebody's position. We disagree on a lot of things, but we have to agree to disagree agreeably. That's a big yesod. Right? Write it down. I used to tell my students, write it down. Now I say, open your computer and type it, because nobody writes anything anymore. Agree to disagree agreeably. So I don't know. I don't know what it means, especially Rabbi Akiva. Right? You know the question on that Gemara. Rabbi Akiva is the king of what? What did Rabbi Akiva say is the most important verse in the entire Torah? V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. Now his students. So when I leave, you're going to ask your wonderful Rabbeim, and they'll explain that Gemara to you. But it's not mentioned in this context, and I leave you with the question: why not? When you write up your notes and you're going to publish an article on this issue, you're going to put it in. What's your name? Elior. Chidushe Rebbe Elior. You're going to put it in the book. Anybody else? Yes.
I have a question.
I know you.
Yeah, first.
Shalom Aleichem. What are you doing here?
Well, I saw that Israel this weekend. You didn't have Chabura, so I had to come see you.
Oh my God, it's amazing. It's amazing.
So, I mean, the first Gemara talks about machlokas base Hillel, base Shammai, but there were machlokas in between Shammai and Hillel themselves. So, is there a difference between Riva and machlokas? Because this only talks about like the
Riva. What's
Ravu?
Misharabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel. Misharabu means when they became many.
Okay, so but then why was there machlokas between?
Well, the machlokas here, they're assuming, and the next Gemara also that we saw in Sota on page 2 is Misharabu Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel. We're talking here not about Shammai and Hillel.
Yeah, but why did they have machlokas?
Why did
they themselves have machlokas?
Shammai and Hillel?
Yes.
I don't know. We generally talk about Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So I wonder where it started.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Well, most people don't know there are only 3 machlokas between Shammai and Hillel. There's one more in Smicha. So it was 4 machlokas altogether between. So they didn't have machlokas, and that's the point they're upset.
They had, but you can count them on half a hand. So that's different than what happened afterwards. Afterwards, it exploded. And at the end of the day, we need a land. We generally land with Hillel, with Beis Hillel, which is the Gemara. Actually, I want to show you. Let's go to anybody else. Yes.
Wasn't it the case, if you think about it historically, Shammai and Hillel, definitely their house, they weren't the first set of Zugot. There were many Zugot, not many, but there were Zugot before them. You assume that, given that there are Zugot, that there are already 2 different.
So I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know enough to answer that question. But I think you would need to make a case, which I'm prepared to hear, that they were actually arguing with one another. Could be that they were chavrusas. Could be that they were on the same page. I don't know enough to know. I don't think, by definition, the fact that there was zugot means automatically that they were disagreeing with one another. I don't know. I just don't know. Yeah.
What separates the disagreement between me and my chavrusa and what's happening between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel?
I think there the stakes are higher because it's a halachic implication. When you fight with your chavrusa, you're trying to figure out what the pshat of the Gemara is or what the Tosfot means. So it's different to disagree with an interpretation than it is to disagree with a practical law. That's what I think. Unless you guys are so great and holy that you're just banging heads about a So I think we should be able to do this on Shabbos. No, you can't do this on Shabbos. Yeah. You're the guy who's like not sure how much respect you have. Okay. Just know one thing. I have respect for you. That's all. Okay. What's your name?
Aviel.
Aviel. Beautiful name. The Father of God. Okay. That's a tough one, but let's keep going.
God is my father.
Okay.
My question
God is my Father. That's beautiful. Thank you. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you. My question about Shammai and Hillel. So, when the Gemara says that the Machlokot ended up kind of becoming like each party had their own version of the Torah.
Yeah.
Did they not agree on certain basic principles?
Yeah. They didn't disagree about everything. They agreed about basic fundamental principles. There's a Gemara in Yevamos, check it out, 14b, that lists a series of areas where there was a disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So it's not endless, it's limited. But even that, the Gemara is prepared to say, as we saw, the Na says Torah kishtei Toros. It was fundamentally different with incredible implications, which brings me to page 6. Says the Gemara. Amar Rab Abba Amar Shmuel. English translation on the left side of page 7. At the top left of page 7. Rabbi Abba said in the name of Shmuel, Sholosh Sholim Nechlaku Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. For 3 years, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel debated each other. For 3 years. I don't know, it doesn't seem to me to be like a very long time. But it's a substantial amount of time. For 3 years, they're arguing with one another. Halolo Omrim, Halacha Kimosenu. These said that the halacha follows their view. I'm reading now from the English on page 7 on the left side. V'halolo Omrim, Halacha Kimosenu. And the other one said that the halacha follows their view. Each side insisted that its own view was correct. Which I would expect. Right? That makes sense. I take question? Finish? And then a question? You can hold it? You're okay?
Yes.
So you write it down, you'll remember?
I remember.
If I were you, I'd have to write it down, but you're younger than me, so you're in good shape. I would understand that each one thinks they're right. That's I have a position. I think I'm right. No, the other one, just like me, they think that they're right. For 3 years. What happened? Yotza Baskova Amr, a heavenly voice went forth and declared, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim hein. These and those are the words of the living God. Basically, they're both right. These and those. The divine imprimatur has been vested on both of these opinions. They're both divrei Elokim chaim. They're both representative of the words of the living God, but halacha kebeis Hillel. Because at the end of the day, they both may be right, but they can't both be simultaneously right. You can't say either it's mutter or it's usser. Either you're allowed to do it, you're not allowed to do it. You can't say, well, they're both correct, because they're both mutually exclusive. So you have to land. Where you're going to land? The halacha, they're both right, but the halacha, bottom line, practice, we follow Beis Hillel. Ask the Gemara, very logical question. You just told me that they're both right. Because of what reason did Beit Hillel merit to fix the halacha according to their view? Why are they a bigger yachsin? Why are they more authoritative than Beis Shammai if we just finished saying that they're both equally the beneficiaries of the divine beneficence? Hashem says they're both right. So why do we follow Beis Hillel? Right? You're familiar with, in the world of halacha, Beis Hillel is the one that takes priority. And the Gemara says something, and if you only came, or if I only came to read this line, it was worth my coming to spend time with you. Do you know why we follow Beis Hillel? Because they were easy and forbearing. You know why we follow Beis Hillel, even though Beis Shammai is equally right? Because Beis Hillel, they're nice. They're nice. They're nice people. And they're so nice. They're so pleasant and easygoing and comfortable. And they feel relaxed. And Vishonim Divrei V'Divrei Beis Shammai. And then when they would study both their own opinion, parenthesis, which they believed was 100% correct, end parenthesis, and the opinion of Beis Shammai. And not only that, V'lo od el shemakdimim divrei Beis Shammai l'divreihem, they would mention the matters of Beis Shammai first. This is actually psychotically amazing. Why do we follow Beis Hillel? There's a machloket, right? We posited because shaloshim shu kol tzorcham, because they were arrogant, because things happen over the vagaries of the historical development of the Jewish people. But we have to land. But both of them, elu ve'elu, divrei Elokim chayim. Could you imagine if God parachuted down and put a check onto your notebook next to your Gemara and said, you're right? Right? None less than God said they're right. And God said they're right, so they're both right. Why do we follow him? Because he's nice. Not because his argument is stronger, not because his argument is better, not because he has better proofs, not because it's more sophisticated. They're equal. At the end of the day, what matters most is he's nice. He's respectful. Nochin va'aluvin, be nice. So I'm asking you, be nice. Be nice. Be learned. Be pious. Be a Yirei Shamayim. Serve God. Recognize what it means to daven. When you daven, you talk to God. You're in God's presence. Instead of you're talking to Hashem. And you want to be pious, you want to be erlich. Erlich means, I don't know, there's some words I don't know how to translate. Pious. Good, sincere, authentic Jews. And you want to be a Talmud Chacham. That's why you're here. You're sitting in front of tables with the Svarim on them. And you're learning from Gedolei Yisrael, who are sitting here, who teach you. And that's important. You want to leave here pious. You want to leave here learned. And I'm adding a third component. Leave here nice. You want to be a nice person. And nice goes a very long way. And here's a Beferish Gemara. Nice made it happen. Nice. Not because he was smarter, not because he was better, not because he was sharper, not because he had a better proof. He was nicer. And because he was nicer, Hashem says, he's my guy. I'm going with him. Because Nochin va'aluvim hayu. The last thing I want to refer you to is on the right side of page 7, but I am running out of time. So I ran out of time. So it's been a real pleasure to get to know you. I'll stay another few minutes. I don't want to hold you up. I know it's lunch now. It's now lunch. It's now.
You want to talk about the Rabbi J.J. said a few minutes, a couple minutes. We'll let you go.
Well,
over.
tell me how much time.
If you have another 5 minutes, it's fine.
5.
Absolutely.
But
it's worth it for them to hear. They don't know anything about it.
Okay. So you'll read on the right side of page 7. How can it be that how can two opposite opinions be correct? Conceptually, you don't have to be a sophisticated philosopher to recognize that there's an intrinsic problematic with that assertion. They're both right. How can you're allowed to do it? You're not allowed to do it. Both be right. And I have here a number of explanations. One from the Ritva, who lived in Spain in the 14th century. One from the Chida Chaim Yosef David Azulai, who lived in the 18th century. One of the most famous disagreements that really shattered and convulsed Jewish history occurred in the middle of the 18th century between two incredibly great rabbis. One is Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, and the other is Rabbi Yaakov Emden. So these are names that hopefully you will remember. Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz was probably, arguably, the Gadol Hador in the middle of the 18th century, which was no mean feat. There were a lot of incredibly great rabbis who lived at that time, whose Torah we study until today. But he was recognized as the greatest. And the other protagonist was Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the son of Chacham Tzvi Ashkenazi, who was a really great scholar at the turn of the 18th century, and who himself authored commentaries on all the genres of traditional Jewish literature, and was a firebrand defending the tradition as he understood it. What happened was that Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and I wrote my doctoral dissertation in graduate school on Rabbi Yaakov Emden. So if I start saying the words Rabbi Yaakov Emden, you have to pull me away after 19 hours because I'm got a lot to share. But because now I have only 4 minutes left, I will tell you that Rabbi Yaakov Emden accused Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz, who was the Gadol Hador, of being a follower of Shabtai Tzvi. Who is Shabtai Tzvi? Shabtai Tzvi in English is the Sabbatian movement. In the middle of the 17th century, in 1665, Shabtai Tzvi was announced as the Messiah. So you may know that there is a notion of Mashiach in our tradition. It is in the list of the 13 principles of faith of the Rambam of Maimonides, to believe that there is a Messiah who will come and who will redeem the Jewish people and will change the world as we know it. So there was a notion of messianic belief that was central to traditional Judaism. Then there was a whole concept of messianic speculation. I want to tell you when I think the Messiah is going to come. In other words, it's not just enough for me to believe that someday, someday whenever he comes, I'm going to believe in him, but I feel the urge to actually pinpoint a date for the arrival of the Messiah. And then the smallest, most shrinking concentric circle was messianic activism. So throughout Jewish history, there were about 24 examples where in Sfarad and in Ashkenaz, where people announced either themselves or announced someone else, there is the Messiah. Not someday, not I'll tell you when, but it's happening right now. Basically, none of them ever got off the ground. They just fizzled, and very little following, and they just flared and popped and gone, and everything went on as usual. First one that really mattered was Shabtai Tzvi in the middle of the 17th century. Why Dafka this messianic movement took hold is not for now, but know that I would venture to say 90% of world Jewry believed that he was the Messiah. From Poland to Persia, from London to Livorno, Klal Yisrael, pretty much Kulam, Hodu, Vehimlichu, Va'amru, almost in totality, 90% of Jews believed that he was the Messiah. And then, 15 months later, the Sultan of Turkey got nervous because now there's a lot of agitation. The Jews are beginning to move. You know, when the Messiah comes, everybody's going to move to Israel, and in Hamburg and in Istanbul, all the rich Jews were throwing all of their products on the market for a dime for the dollar because they were heading out, and there was a havoc in the economic system, and the political system in the empire was beginning to shift. And the Sultan calls him in and says, either you convert to Islam or I will kill you. And so, lo and behold, the Messiah converts to Islam. The Messiah became a Muslim. Now, anything you know about Jewish life, it's not likely that the Messiah is going to be a Muslim. The Messiah will probably be a Jew. That's what that's what my Mora told me in second grade, that the Mashiach, we believe. And now all of a sudden the Messiah converts to Islam. the vast majority of Jews who had believed he was the Messiah recognized with great suffering and great disappointment that they made a mistake. You can imagine if you believe that the Messiah is here, this is it. This is the end of history as we know it. And all of a sudden, whoops, it's not happening. Tremendous letdown. And they crawled back, and they had to pick up the pieces, and they had to live with this. However, there were some Jews who still continued subterranean to believe that he was the Messiah. And this was considered to be heretical by the establishment Jewish community, because what do you mean he's the Messiah? What do you mean Sabbatianism? Sabbatian is short for Shabtai Tzvi. It's the movement that was precipitated by Shabtai Tzvi's becoming the Messiah, but then dealt a severe blow when he converted, and there were still people who believed in him, and Rabbi Yaakov Emden accused Rabbi Yonatan Eibshitz of being a follower of Shabtai Tzvi, and the proof that he had, one of two proofs, is on page 7. I'll take one moment to explain it to you, and you'll understand what I mean. There is such a notion in Jewish... do I have another?
We can't stop now. I don't know, Rabbi Schoonmaker?
Another 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. There is a concept called the At.
It's better than lunch, I mean.
Now, if I'm standing between you and lunch, that's the worst place that I want to be, is between you and lunch. But I guess I am between you and lunch. Okay, so what can I do? All right. At Bash parallelism means you take the first letter of the alphabet and the last letter of the alphabet, the second letter of the alphabet and the second to the last letter of the alphabet, the third to the last, and so on. At Bash Gar Dak Hatz Va Bat. So it's Aleph Tov, Beis Shin, Gimel Reish, Dalet Kuf. You understand what I'm saying? First and last, and then there's a parallel that goes all the way through. We actually have this in the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch tells us if you know what day of the week Pesach is, then you will be able to know what day of the week other holidays will be. Or in one case, Purim was. But you'll be able to anchor the day of the week, not the day of the month. We know when the day of the month of the holiday, but the day of the week, we know it, and it's in the Shulchan Aruch. Says Rabbi Emden. Rabbi Eibshitz, when he came to Altona, Hamburg, Wandsbek, to become the chief rabbi in 1750, and even beforehand, gave amulets. An amulet is a little parchment that has letters on it. It's like a good luck charm, let's call it. It's a lot more than that, but that's the only way I can really explain it. And it wards off evil forces. There were women who were dying in childbirth, and they went to Rabbi Eibshitz, who was not only an beyond unbelievable rabbinic scholar, but also had a lot of mystical knowledge. And he gave them these amulets that they put under the pillow of the woman, and Baruch Hashem, it helped. And these amulets were excavated, were taken out, and they were opened up. He already had given them when he was in his previous rabbinic position in Metz, in France, before he came to Germany. And you have the amulet on the left-hand side of page 8. And it's gibberish. If you read the block letters in the middle of the left-hand side of page 8, it makes no sense. No sense. However, if you take letter by letter and keep some as they are, and then when it becomes gibberish, switch the letter with the Atbash symbolism, said Rabbi Emden, you will come to the following conclusion. You see in the block letters in the middle on the left-hand side, B'Shem Yud Tzadi Vav He Aleph Bet He Yud Yud Bet. It means nothing. It's mamish. It makes no sense. But if you use the Atbash, said Rabbi Emden, it's in sort of Rashi letters on the right-hand side. B'Shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael Hashochem B'Teferes Uzo Yochid Mamtzi Kol Mitziot Elohei Mishicho Ne'emano Shabtai Tzvi. All you have to do is flip the Aleph and the Taf and the Beis and the Shin and the Gimel and the Reish, and it pops right out. And the amulet said Rabbi Emden, the amulet that was clearly written by Rabbi Eibschitz, that Rabbi Eibschitz did not deny writing, said Rabbi Emden, the Lord of his Messiah, his faithful Messiah Shabtai Tzvi. That's pretty damning evidence that the author of this amulet was a follower of Shabtai Tzvi, which is a bad thing. It's a very, very, very bad thing. Rabbi Eibschitz defended himself and said that Rabbi Emden used the wrong parallelism. If you use a different parallelism, then there's an entirely different interpretation of what it was that he meant to write, which is by no means at all related to Sebeit Venus. Rabbi Eibschitz on Kol Nidrei night went to the Aron Kodesh of the big shul in Altona in Hamburg, and he opened it up, and he opened up the doors, and he put his hand on a Sefer Torah, and he took a Shavua, I swear, Kol Nidrei night, holding a Sefer Torah, I swear that I'm not a follower of Shabtai Tzvi. He absolutely denied it. Rabbi Emden said, you could deny it from today till tomorrow, but look at what you wrote. And if it's a different way how to interpret it, then why did you write it in a way that all you need to do is to do the Ad Bash symbolism and it pops out Shabtai Tzvi? This disagreement convulsed the Jewish world at that time. It was divided between the pro-Rabbi Emden forces and the pro-Rabbi Eibschitz forces. Everybody put everyone else into cherem. You know what cherem is? Excommunication. Everybody excommunicated everybody else. I tell my students that if you were not excommunicated, you were very upset and depressed. I'm not worth excommunicating. Like I'm a nobody? Everybody was excommunicated. And the Jewish world split, and rabbinic authority took a blow. Could you imagine two great rabbis killing each other? It was horrible. This is now second half of the 18th century. Modernity is now moving into the Jewish community. And before we know it, modernity takes hold of the Jewish community. Traditional Jewish life becomes minority. We have the emergence of the Reform movement. When rabbinic authority is not strong, then the whole Jewish world collapses. So this is an example, a devastating example of a machloket. I believe that each one was l'shem shamayim. Each one took a position. Obviously, each one felt that they were right. But this is a reality. You're not absent from disagreement right now in January of 2026, living here in Israel. There's a lot of disagreement going on in the religious Torani community here in Eretz Yisrael, in Medinat Yisrael. And the stakes are very high and the intensity is very large. But we pray to God that we should be able to live with one another and that sane heads should prevail and that what we believe in the most should be able to continue, and we should have Shalom Ad Yisrael internally and also externally. I wish you